The screen crackled with cold, clinical sentences, words that shattered 38 years in an instant. My hands trembled as I read the scheduled messages waiting to destroy me, proof that the man I'd loved my entire adult life had planned my financial ruin. But what I didn't know then was that this moment of betrayal would become my greatest awakening. Hello, and welcome back to Grandma True Stories. I'm so glad you're here with me today. Before I begin, I want to know, where are you listening from right now? What time is it where you are? I just want to know I'm not alone in this moment with you. Today's story is filled with truth, betrayal, love, and the kind of redemption that only comes when you're forced to stand on your own 2 feet. This is a story about what really happens behind closed doors, the secrets, the lies, and the strength we didn't know we had. If this story moves you, if it reaches something deep inside your heart, I'm asking you to consider subscribing to Grandma True Stories. Help me spread the word about the reality of betrayal and the power of resilience. These stories matter. Your listening matters. Now let me tell you what really happened. My name is Margaret Eleanor Hayes, but everyone has called me Maggie my whole life. I'm 62 years old, and I've been married to the same man for 38 years. I've raised 2 beautiful children, taught elementary school for 34 years, and I thought I had a good life. I thought I knew my husband. That Tuesday morning started like any other Tuesday. I woke up at 6 o'clock the way I always do. Richard was already gone. He'd left for the office before dawn, the way he did most mornings now. I didn't think much of it. Over the past 5 years, Richard's schedule had become unpredictable. His real estate development company was thriving, he said. He was managing bigger projects, closing larger deals. He needed to be at the office early and stay late. I made my coffee the way I always did, 2 sugars, a splash of cream, and I sat at the kitchen table looking out at our backyard. The roses were blooming. I'd planted them 15 years ago, and they came back every spring without fail. There was something comforting about that consistency, that reliability. At least the roses didn't change, I remember thinking. I was 62 years old, retired from teaching for 3 years, and if I'm being honest with you, I was a little bit lost. You spend 34 years of your life in a classroom, pouring everything into children who grow up and move on. Then one day, you retire, and suddenly all that energy, all that purpose, has nowhere to go. I'd tried to adjust. I did volunteer work at the library. I had lunch with my girlfriends once a week. I helped with my grandchildren. But there was a hollowness to it all, a sense that I was going through the motions of a life, rather than truly living one. Richard and I had drifted apart, I suppose. That's the way these things happen, isn't it? Not with a bang, but with a slow fade, like watercolor in rain. We'd been married so long that we had routines instead of conversations. We had a comfortable bed instead of intimacy. We had a shared house instead of a shared life. I told myself this was normal. This is what marriage becomes after so many years. The passion fades, the intensity diminishes. You're left with companionship, stability, and a kind of tired acceptance. I told myself I was lucky. So many marriages ended. Ours had endured. That was enough, wasn't it? But deep down, in a place I didn't want to examine too closely, I knew something was wrong. Richard had become distant. Not in an obvious way. He wasn't cruel or dismissive. He was just absent. Even when he was in the room, he wasn't really there. His mind was somewhere else. His phone was always in his hand. He'd excuse himself to take calls. He'd disappear into his office with the door closed for hours. He'd tell me not to wait up for dinner because he'd be late. Again, I'd mentioned it to my friend Carol one afternoon over lunch. He's just stressed about work, I'd said, stirring my salad without really tasting it. The company is doing well, but there's a lot of pressure at his level. Carol had looked at me in a way I didn't quite understand at the time. Knowing maybe. Sad, certainly. But she didn't say anything. She just squeezed my hand and ordered dessert. That Tuesday morning, after my coffee, I went to get ready for the day. I was supposed to meet my daughter, Jennifer, for lunch. She wanted to talk about something. She'd been vague on the phone, which worried me a little. Jennifer was my oldest, 35 years old, a lawyer, practical and straightforward. She didn't beat around the bush. I was in the shower when I realized I'd misplaced my phone. I couldn't find it anywhere in the bedroom. That's when I remembered. I'd used it at the grocery store the day before, and then I wasn't quite sure where it had ended up. This was becoming more common. I'd lose my glasses, my keys, my phone. Nothing dramatic, just the small frustrations of aging. I called the store, but they hadn't found it. I called my phone to see if anyone had turned it in, but it went straight to voicemail. I felt that small flutter of annoyance that always comes with losing something, but also a strange sort of relief. My phone had been acting up lately. The battery was dying faster. There were apps that wouldn't load properly. Maybe this was the universe telling me it was time for a new one. It was Richard who suggested I take his phone to David Chen's repair shop. David was a family friend. We'd known him for about 10 years. His oldest daughter had been in my class years ago, and we'd stayed in touch. He ran a small phone and computer repair shop about 15 minutes from our house. Richard said David could probably fix whatever was wrong with my phone or help me recover it if it was lost. Just take my phone to him, Richard had said that morning over breakfast. He was distracted, scrolling through something on his laptop. Tell him to bill me. He'll take care of you? This was Tuesday. I remember it was Tuesday because it was my standing lunch day with Jennifer, and also because the grocery delivery came on Tuesdays. I stopped by David's shop after my lunch with Jennifer. Our lunch had been uneventful, actually. Jennifer had wanted to talk about her son's school situation. Nothing serious, just the usual parenting concerns. I'd been relieved, honestly. I'd built up the worry in my head, but there was nothing to worry about. David's shop was in a small strip mall, sandwiched between a dry cleaner and a nail salon. The bell chimed when I walked in. David was behind the counter, and he looked up with a smile. "Maggie! Richard said you might stop by. Phone problems." I explained about my missing phone, showed him Richard's phone, and asked if he could help me locate mine, or if I needed to just buy a new one. "Let me take a look at his," David said, reaching for the phone. "Sometimes phones that seem lost are just in a weird state. I can run a diagnostic, see what's going on." I browsed the small store while he worked. There were phone cases, chargers, those little screen protector things. I wasn't really looking for anything. I was just killing time, the way you do. I remember looking at a case with little cats on it and thinking it was silly, but also kind of cute. It must have been 5 or 10 minutes later when David called me over. His voice sounded different, careful, quiet. "Maggie, can you come here for a second?" I walked over to the counter. David's usual friendly expression was gone. His face was serious, almost grave. "What is it?" I asked. "Did you find my phone?" "No, it's not that," he said. He glanced toward the back of the shop, then back at me. "Maggie, I need to talk to you about something. Is there somewhere more private we can sit?" We went into his small back office. There was a desk, 2 chairs, a filing cabinet, a window that looked out onto the parking lot. David closed the door carefully behind us. "I need you to listen to me carefully," he said. "And I need you to trust that I'm telling you this because I care about you and Richard, and because you need to know." My heart had started to beat faster. "David, you're scaring me." "What is it?" He placed Richard's phone on the desk between us. The screen was lit up, showing the phone's settings page. "I was running diagnostics on the phone," he said slowly. "And the system showed me that there are several scheduled messages. Do you know what that means?" I shook my head. I didn't really understand phones that well. I could call people, send texts, take pictures. But the deeper workings of them were still somewhat mysterious to me. "It means messages that have been programmed to send at a specific time in the future," David explained. "They're just sitting there, waiting to go out." "Maggie, I didn't read all of them, but I scrolled through a few and I think you need to see them." He turned the phone toward me and opened the message app. There, in the scheduled messages folder, were dozens of them. Maybe more than 100, all dated for various times in the future. Some were scheduled for next month, some for next year. All of them addressed to various people, banks, credit card companies, lawyers, his business partner. With trembling fingers, I clicked on one. It was dated for 3 weeks from that day. "This is to notify you that I am officially dissolving my accounts and transferring all funds to the following offshore account." I opened another one. "I am no longer responsible for the debts accrued by my spouse and will be filing for separation effective immediately." Another. "Please freeze all joint accounts. I have authorized the following transfers for." The room seemed to tilt. I couldn't breathe properly. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. "There's more," David said quietly. "Look at this one." It was a message to a law firm, dated for 6 months from that day, following my relocation to a country I won't name. "I am authorizing my legal team to handle the settlement of my marriage. My spouse will receive minimal support." I don't remember standing up. I don't remember what sounds I made. I remember David's hand on my arm, his voice saying my name over and over, Maggie. Maggie, you need to breathe. Maggie, look at me. When I could finally form words, all I could say was, what does this mean? What is he doing? David's face was full of pain and compassion. Maggie, I think your husband is planning to disappear. And he's set up these messages to notify everyone. The banks, the creditors, the lawyers, after he's gone. He's planned it all out. He's going to take the money and leave you with the debt. No, I said. No, Richard would never. We've been married for. I know, David said. I know this doesn't make sense. But Maggie, you need to act fast. You need to cancel your credit cards. You need to talk to a lawyer. You need to protect yourself and your children. The next thing David said, I'll never forget. He looked me right in the eye and said, cancel the cards and change the locks immediately. Do it today. Do it now. And that's when my life split into a before and an after. Before I knew, and after I knew. Before I understood what my husband had planned for me, and after. My hands were still shaking when I left David's shop. I don't remember driving home. I don't remember the traffic lights or the turns I made. I just remember arriving at my house. The house I'd lived in for 23 years, the house I'd raised my children in, the house I'd thought was safe, and sitting in the driveway for a very long time. I needed to think. I needed to understand what I'd just learned. But my mind felt like it had been scrambled. Nothing made sense. Richard loved me. We had a good marriage. We had grandchildren. We had a life together. He wouldn't just leave. He wouldn't take everything and abandon me. But he had scheduled it. He'd programmed his own abandonment into a machine, set it to send automatically, like a timer on a bomb. I sat in that car and forced myself to breathe. In through the nose. Out through the mouth, the way I'd taught my students to do when they were upset. Calm your body first. Your mind will follow. When I finally went inside, I felt like a ghost moving through a life that wasn't mine anymore. The kitchen looked the same. The roses through the window still looked the same. But everything had changed. I went to the home office. Richard's office, really. I'd rarely gone in there. He kept it locked, and I'd respected his privacy. That's what you do in a marriage, isn't it? You respect your partner's privacy. You trust them. I tried the lock. It was locked, of course. But I knew where Richard kept his keys. He had a small dish on the dresser in our bedroom. Keys, cufflinks, loose change. I went and found them, my heart pounding as if I was committing a crime. The office door swung open. Richard's desk was immaculate. Computer, phone charger. A leather desk set with pens. Filing cabinets along one wall. Everything neat, everything organized. I felt like I was looking at the office of a man I'd never met. I didn't know what I was looking for. Proof, maybe. Evidence that David was wrong, that this was some kind of misunderstanding. But I didn't know where to look. I'm not a detective. I'm a retired elementary school teacher. I don't know how to investigate financial crimes or marital betrayal. Instead, I just sat at his desk and felt the weight of everything pressing down on me. I looked at my watch. It was 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Richard usually came home at 7 or 8, sometimes later. I had maybe 4 hours to figure out what to do. I picked up the phone. My phone now, I supposed. Though it felt strange to hold, and I called Jennifer. Mom. She answered on the third ring. What's wrong? I can hear it in your voice. Can you come to the house? I asked. I need to tell you something, and I can't do it over the phone. I'll be there in 20 minutes, she said immediately. Are you okay? Is it Dad? I'm fine, I said. Just. Please come. I hung up and sat there in Richard's office, looking at all the neat, organized things that belonged to a man planning a neat, organized escape. Jennifer arrived 20 minutes later with her brother Michael. She must have called him. Michael lived about 40 minutes away, but apparently Jennifer had decided this was serious enough to get the whole family involved. I told them everything. I showed them the phone. I'd brought it into the living room and set it on the coffee table like it was a bomb that might go off. I showed them the scheduled messages. I watched my children's faces as they read the words their father had written. Jennifer, who was logical and practical, went very still. Michael, who was more emotional, started pacing back and forth. This is insane, Michael said. This is absolutely insane. We need to call the police. We need to call a lawyer right now. A lawyer, yes, Jennifer said, her mind already working through the implications. Not the police, not yet. But Mom, we need to act today, tonight. We can't wait. What do we do? I asked. My voice sounded very small. First, Jennifer said, pulling out her phone, we cancel the credit cards. All of them. I'm going to call our credit card company and we're going to report them as stolen or compromised. That will freeze them immediately. Then we contact a lawyer," Michael added. "We need to file for separation or divorce, or whatever the hell we do to protect your assets." Jennifer was already on the phone, speaking in calm, measured tones to someone at the credit card company. I watched her, this daughter of mine who I'd taught to ride a bicycle and tie her shoes, now fighting to protect her mother's life. It took 2 hours to cancel everything. The credit cards, the joint bank accounts. We had to call bank after bank, credit card company after credit card company, each time telling the same story. "Yes, I'm the account holder. No, these charges are not authorized. Yes. I need to freeze everything immediately." With each call, I felt a little piece of my old life dying. The life where I trusted my husband. The life where I didn't have to worry about money or betrayal or abandonment. By the time we were done, it was 6 o'clock. Richard would be home in an hour or two. "What are we going to say to him?" Michael asked. "What are we going to do when he walks in that door?" Jennifer and I exchanged a look. "We need a lawyer first," Jennifer said, "before we confront him." "Mom, do you have a lawyer?" I didn't. I'd never needed one. Richard had always handled the business things, the legal things. I'd been content to let him do it. I'd been content to let him do a lot of things. Jennifer called a friend of hers who knew family law attorneys, and within 30 minutes, she had a recommendation and had left a message with an emergency line. We were told someone would call back within the hour. At 6:45, the lawyer called, a woman named Patricia Morse. She was brisk and professional, and she asked me a lot of questions very quickly. When I was finished explaining, she said, "Mrs. Hayes, you've done exactly the right things. Freezing the accounts was critical. Now here's what needs to happen. You need to see me tomorrow morning. In my office. Bring any financial documents you can find, bank statements, investment accounts, property deeds, anything related to your assets. And do not discuss this with your husband until we have a proper strategy in place. He'll be home any minute," I said. "Then you're going to have to act normally," Patricia said. "I know that's difficult, but it's crucial. Don't tip him off. Don't let him know that you know. Can you do that?" "Could I?" I looked at Jennifer and Michael. They both nodded. "Yes," I said, "I can do that." But when I heard Richard's car in the driveway at 7:30, I wasn't sure. My heart was pounding. My palms were sweating. How was I supposed to look him in the eye? He came through the door, loosening his tie, looking tired the way he always did after a long day at work. He kissed me on the cheek, a perfunctory kiss, the kind you give someone you've been married to for a long time and taken for granted. "Hey," he said. "How was your day?" "Fine," I said. The word came out almost normal. We canceled the credit cards. I watched his face. I saw the moment the words registered. I saw the confusion, then the understanding, then the panic. "You what?" he said. "We canceled the credit cards," I repeated louder this time. "All of them. We froze all the joint accounts." He looked from me to Jennifer to Michael. They were standing in the living room, and for the first time, I think he realized they'd been there the whole time. "What the hell is going on?" he demanded. "David Chen called me," I said, "after you brought your phone to his shop for repair. He found the scheduled messages. He called me and told me what you were planning." For a moment, Richard didn't move. He didn't speak. And then something in his face changed. The mask slipped. The person I'd been married to for 38 years disappeared, and a stranger looked out from behind his eyes. "You had no right," he said quietly. "No right to go through my private messages. You were going to destroy our family," Jennifer said, her voice cold and hard. "You were going to take everything and disappear. So yes, we had a right. I'm calling my lawyer," Richard said, and he started to walk toward his office. "Don't bother," Michael said, blocking his way. "You're going to want to leave. You're going to want to get out of here while you still have some dignity. Because tomorrow morning, Mom is meeting with Patricia Morse, and you're going to find out exactly what the legal consequences are for financial abandonment and fraud." Richard's face twisted. For just a moment, I saw something in him I'd never seen before. Anger, yes, but also fear. And something else. Something cold and empty. This was a man I didn't know. This was a man who'd been living with me, sleeping beside me, eating breakfast with me, while planning my destruction. "I'm done here," Richard said. And he left. He walked out of the house, got in his car, and drove away. We didn't know it then, but we wouldn't see him again for 3 months. He went to a hotel that night. Then a rental apartment. He hired his own lawyer, who immediately started trying to undo everything we'd done. But by then it was too late. Because we'd moved fast. Because my children had stood by me. Because a family friend had cared enough to tell me the truth. That first night after Richard left, I stood in my kitchen with Jennifer and Michael, and I realized something. I wasn't devastated. I wasn't destroyed. I was angry. I was shocked. I was betrayed. But I was also, in some strange way, relieved. Because the truth, no matter how ugly it is always better than a beautiful lie. And now I knew the truth about my marriage. I could finally start healing from it. The next morning I woke up in a bed that felt too big. Richard's side was empty, the sheets cold. It was only then that I fully grasped what had happened. My husband had left. Not because of an argument. Not because of some temporary crisis we could work through. But because his plan had been discovered, and he was running. I didn't sleep much that night. I'd lain there in the dark, listening to the house settle and creak around me. Feeling the weight of 38 years pressing down on my chest. At some point around 3 in the morning, I got up and went into the kitchen. I made tea, not coffee, something calmer. I sat at the table and watched the sky slowly turn from black to gray to a pale, tentative blue. By the time Jennifer picked me up at 8 o'clock, I'd had 3 cups of tea and had changed my clothes twice. I wanted to look strong. I wanted to look like a woman who knew what she was doing, even though I felt like I was drowning. Patricia Morse's office was on the 4th floor of a downtown building. It was clean and professional, with leather chairs and mahogany furniture. Patricia herself was a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and an efficient manner. She'd seen a lot of betrayal in her career, I think. Nothing I told her would surprise her. I brought what documents I could find. Bank statements, investment account numbers, property deeds. Richard had been careful about keeping them somewhat organized, which actually worked in our favor. Patricia reviewed everything with a methodical precision, making notes, asking questions. "How long have you been married?" she asked. 38 years, I said. "And this is your primary residence?" "Yes." "We've lived here for 23 years. Do you have retirement accounts? Pensions from your teaching job?" "Yes. A teacher's pension and some savings I accumulated over the years." Patricia nodded, still writing. "Here's the situation, Mrs. Hayes. Your husband has committed fraud. He's attempted to hide assets and conceal his intent to abandon marital responsibilities. In this state, that's going to work heavily in your favor. You're entitled to half of all marital assets, regardless of what he's done, and given the severity of his actions, a judge will likely look unfavorably on any attempt he makes to minimize your settlement." "What about the money?" I asked. "The money he was going to move overseas. That's where it gets complicated," Patricia said. "If we can prove he was attempting to transfer assets with the intent to defraud you, we can potentially recover some of it. But I'm going to be honest with you. If he's already moved it, if it's already in an offshore account, it becomes much harder. We'd have to file suit in multiple jurisdictions, possibly hire international lawyers. It gets very expensive very quickly." My heart sank. "So he might get away with it." "Not entirely," Patricia said. "But I won't lie to you, the full amount. That's going to be difficult. However, what we can do is make sure you're protected going forward. We file for separation immediately. We get a court order freezing any further transfers. We document everything he's done. And we make sure that when this is over, you have security and stability." She pulled out a document. "I'm going to file this separation petition today. It includes a request for temporary support from your husband, spousal support, and a division of marital assets. We're also going to request that he be required to maintain insurance on the house and that he contribute to the ongoing expenses." "He won't agree to that," I said quietly. "He doesn't have to," Patricia replied. "The court will decide. And given what he's done, I think a judge is going to be very sympathetic to your position." Over the next 3 weeks, things moved very quickly. Richard hired a lawyer, a man named Stephen Berkeley, who was as cold and aggressive as Patricia was strategic and fair. Berkeley filed motions trying to undo the account freezes. He claimed that Richard had the right to transfer his own money as he saw fit. He argued that the marriage had been deteriorating for years and that Richard was entitled to protect his assets. But Patricia was ready for every move. She'd filed police reports about the fraud. She'd documented the scheduled messages. She'd gotten statements from David Chen about what he'd found. She had built an airtight case. During this time, I lived in a kind of suspended animation. I went to my lawyer's appointments. I answered questions. I provided documents. I attended a deposition where Berkeley tried to make me look foolish, suggesting that I'd misunderstood the messages, that Richard hadn't really meant to leave me, that I was being hysterical and overreacting. Patricia objected repeatedly to his questions. "My client is not on trial here," she said sharply. "Your client's actions are." The hardest part was the silence from Richard. He didn't call. He didn't try to explain himself. He didn't try to make any kind of peace. It was as if, once his plan had been discovered, he'd simply decided I no longer existed. He wanted to erase me from his life, and the fact that the law wouldn't let him seemed to infuriate him. I heard secondhand, through Michael, that Richard was telling people I'd stolen his phone and violated his privacy, that I was a vindictive ex-wife trying to destroy him out of spite, that I'd misunderstood innocent business messages. He was rewriting the narrative, trying to make himself the victim. But the evidence didn't lie. The scheduled messages didn't lie. The attempt to move millions offshore didn't lie. 6 weeks after that first day in David's shop, we had a settlement hearing. I dressed carefully. I wore a navy blue dress, nothing too flashy, nothing that would distract from the facts. Jennifer came with me. So did Michael. Patricia had instructed me on what to expect. But nothing can really prepare you for sitting in a courtroom and hearing a judge talk about the dissolution of your marriage, as if it's just another case number. Judge Harrison was a woman in her 60s. She had a kind face, but her eyes were sharp and intelligent. "Mrs. Hayes," she said, looking at me over her glasses, "you've been through something difficult. I've reviewed the evidence in this case, and I want you to know that I take Mr. Hayes's actions very seriously. Attempting to defraud a spouse and conceal assets is not acceptable, regardless of the state of the marriage." She turned to Richard, who was sitting beside Berkeley, his face a mask. "Mr. Hayes, you are ordered to cease all attempts to transfer or conceal marital assets immediately. You will provide a full accounting of all assets transferred or attempted to be transferred in the past 6 months. You will pay Mrs. Hayes spousal support in the amount of $5,000 per month for 10 years. You will maintain the family home as security until the divorce is finalized, at which point it will go to Mrs. Hayes, and you will pay her attorney fees and court costs." Richard's lawyer started to object, but the judge raised her hand. "I'm not finished," Judge Harrison said. "I'm also ordering a forensic audit of all your financial accounts for the past 3 years. If we find evidence of additional fraud or asset concealment, there will be criminal charges, not just civil penalties. Do you understand?" "Yes, Your Honor," Berkeley said quietly, because Richard just stared straight ahead. When we left the courthouse, I felt like I'd been hollowed out. I'd won. The court had ruled in my favor. I had security, I had my house, I had support. But I'd also lost 38 years of my life. I'd lost the man I thought I'd married. I'd lost the future I'd imagined. Patricia squeezed my arm as we walked down the courthouse steps. "You did well in there, Mrs. Hayes. You should be proud. Not many people have the strength to stand up like you did." "I'm not sure strength is what I feel," I said. "That's okay," Patricia said. "Strength doesn't always feel like what you think it should. Sometimes it just feels like you're still standing even when everything's fallen down." That night, alone in my house, I sat in the living room and looked around at the place I'd lived for so long with a man who was a stranger. I looked at the furniture we'd picked out together. The photographs on the mantle of our children, our grandchildren, our life. All of it suddenly seemed like it belonged to someone else. I picked up the phone and called my friend Carol. "Can you come over?" I asked. She was there in 20 minutes with a bottle of wine and a box of tissues. We sat on my couch, the couch that was now entirely mine. Because the court had said so, and I cried. Not the kind of crying I'd done in the days after the discovery, which was shock and anger. This was different. This was grief. Grief for a marriage that had never really existed, at least not in the way I'd thought it did. Grief for the future I'd imagined. Grief for the woman I'd been, who'd trusted so completely and been so thoroughly betrayed. "What am I going to do now?" I asked Carol. She squeezed my hand. "You're going to live," she said simply. "You're going to heal, and then you're going to figure out who Margaret Eleanor Hayes is when she's not Margaret Eleanor Hayes the teacher or Margaret Eleanor Hayes the wife." "I don't know who that is," I said. "Then it's time to find out," Carol said. 3 months after the court hearing, I was sitting in my kitchen on a Saturday morning, drinking my coffee. 2 sugars, a splash of cream, the same as always. When I realized something, I was happy. Not the deep, satisfied happiness of a good life with a partner, but something else. A quiet peace, a sense that I was still here. still breathing, still capable of finding moments of light. It was a small thing, but it felt revolutionary. The house was quiet, no Richard coming home late. No Richard disappearing into his office. No Richard on his phone, already somewhere else mentally even when he was in the room. Just me in the morning and the sound of the birds outside. I'd been attending a support group. Patricia had recommended it when I mentioned feeling lost. It was for people going through divorce. And at first I didn't want to go. What did I have in common with these people? Most of them seemed younger, angrier. But I went anyway, and I found something I didn't expect. I found women like me. Women who'd trusted too much. Women who'd built their lives around someone else, and suddenly found themselves alone. Women who were figuring out who they were when no one else was telling them who to be. One of the women in the group, a woman named Susan who was about my age, had suggested something radical. You should take a class, she'd said. Something you've always wanted to do, but never did because your husband wouldn't be interested, or because you didn't have time, or because you didn't think you were good enough. Do it now? I'd laughed. Like what? I'm 62 years old. I'm not going back to school. I didn't mean school, Susan said. I meant something fun, something just for you. When's the last time you did something just for you, Maggie? I thought about it, really thought about it. The answer was I couldn't remember. So I did something I'd been dreaming about for years but had never mentioned to Richard, because he would have thought it was silly. I signed up for a painting class at the community center. My first class was on a Tuesday afternoon in the middle of June. I showed up nervous and self-conscious, convinced that everyone else would be a real artist and I'd be exposed as a fraud. But the instructor, a young man named Marcus, welcomed me warmly and told me that art wasn't about being good. It was about expressing what was inside you. We're not here to create masterpieces, he said. We're here to create. The process matters more than the product. I picked up a brush for the first time in 40 years. I'd taken an art class in college, but I'd forgotten almost everything. My hands felt clumsy and uncertain. The first painting I attempted was a disaster, a landscape that looked more like abstract chaos than anything recognizable. But I didn't care. For 2 hours, I was absorbed in something that had nothing to do with my marriage or my betrayal or my future. I was just mixing colors and moving a brush across canvas and being present in a way I hadn't been in years. When I left that class, I felt lighter. I went back the next week. And the week after that. Slowly, my paintings improved. Not dramatically, but noticeably. Marcus gave me pointers. The other students, there were 8 of us, offered encouragement. I started to look forward to Tuesday afternoons more than I looked forward to anything. Around the same time, Jennifer suggested I volunteer more seriously. You love teaching, she said. Why don't you work with a literacy program? Help adults who struggle to read. I dismissed the idea at first. Volunteering at the library was fine, but teaching again, it felt like going backward. But then I thought about what Susan had said. What was I afraid of? That I wasn't good enough. That I didn't have anything to offer. I'd taught children for 34 years. I had something to offer. I contacted a nonprofit that ran an adult literacy program, and they hired me within 2 weeks. My first student was a woman named Rosa, 41 years old, who'd never learned to read properly in her childhood. She was terrified, ashamed, convinced that she was stupid. You're not stupid, I told her gently. You're brave. It takes courage to want to learn, especially when you've been carrying this alone for so long. We started with simple books, short sentences, building blocks of knowledge. But what I was really doing was giving Rosa something I'd found for myself. Permission to try, permission to fail, permission to be a beginner at something, permission to grow. Watching Rosa's face light up the day she read an entire children's book aloud, watching her understand that she was capable, I felt something shift inside me. This was what I was meant to do. Not to be someone's wife, not to be defined by my marriage or my betrayal, but to be a teacher, to help people discover their own strength. I started teaching 3 days a week. Between teaching and painting in my support group, my days became full in a way they hadn't been since I'd retired. In July, my grandchildren came to visit. Emma was 8, and Thomas was 5. They stayed for a week, and I took them to the park, made their favorite foods, read them stories at bedtime. But I also did something different. I painted with them. I set up easels on the back patio, and we spent an afternoon creating art together. Emma made a painting of a unicorn. Thomas made what he called a dinosaur rainbow. Neither of them was concerned with whether it looked right. They just enjoyed the process of creation. Watching them, I realized something. I'd spent so much of my life worrying about doing things correctly, being what other people needed me to be, that I'd forgotten how to just be. Children knew how to do this naturally. They painted without self-consciousness, they created without judgment, they lived without fear. When had I lost that? In August, I got a phone call that surprised me. It was Richard. "Hello," I said cautiously, my heart suddenly racing. "Maggie, it's me," he said. I was wondering if we could talk. Not about legal things, just talk." My first instinct was to hang up, but something made me pause. "Okay," I said. "What do you want to talk about?" "I'd like to see you," he said. "In person. Could you meet me somewhere?" I told him I'd call him back, and I immediately called Jennifer and Patricia. Jennifer thought it was a bad idea. Patricia said it was my choice, but to be careful. "What does he want?" Patricia asked. "I don't know," I said. He didn't say. But I had a feeling. I'd read enough in the legal documents to know that the forensic audit had uncovered more fraud than anyone had initially realized. The amount Richard had tried to move offshore was much larger than we'd thought. He was facing potential criminal charges. His life was falling apart in a way mine no longer was. I agreed to meet him at a coffee shop, neutral ground, public safe. When I saw him walk in, I barely recognized him. He'd aged 10 years in 3 months. His face was drawn, his shoulders stooped. He looked defeated in a way I'd never seen him look before. We sat at a small table by the window. "I'm sorry," he said, just like that, without preamble. "I'm sorry for what I did. I'm sorry for planning to leave you. I'm sorry for the scheduled messages. I'm sorry for all of it." I studied his face, looking for some sign of sincerity. I found it, I think. Or maybe I just wanted to find it. "Why?" I asked. "Why did you do it?" He was quiet for a long time. "I don't know," he finally said. "I was scared. Business was bad, worse than I told you. I made some bad investments. I was facing financial ruin, and instead of talking to you about it, instead of dealing with it like an adult, I just ran. I made a plan to disappear and leave you with nothing because I couldn't face what I'd done." "Do you know what you did to me?" I asked. My voice was steady, but I could feel the anger underneath it. "Do you understand the betrayal? I trusted you with my life, Richard. I built my entire adult life around you, and you were planning to destroy me?" "I know," he said. "Believe me, I know. I've had 3 months to think about it, and I know exactly what I did." "And?" I asked. "What do you want from me now? Forgiveness?" "No," he said. "I don't deserve that. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry, and I want you to know that what happened, it's not your fault. You didn't make me do this. It was my own failure, my own cowardice. But I don't want you to spend the rest of your life wondering if there was something you could have done differently. There wasn't. I did this. It's on me. I should have felt something more. Vindication, maybe. Satisfaction that he was finally admitting the truth. But what I felt was mainly pity. This man had planned my destruction and failed. He'd thought himself so clever, so strategic, so in control. And in the end, he'd been undone not by his wife or his children or his lawyers, but by his own carefully typed messages and a repair shop owner with a conscience. "I'm glad you're sorry," I said. "But I'm not here for your redemption, Richard. I'm here because you asked, and I thought maybe I needed closure. But I realize I don't. I already have closure. My life has moved on." "I know," he said. "I can see it. You look happy." "I am," I said, and I realized it was true. "I'm learning to paint. I'm teaching adult literacy. I'm spending time with my grandchildren. I'm figuring out who I am when I'm not being defined by my relationship with you. And it turns out I'm someone I actually like." He nodded slowly. "I'm glad," he said. We sat in silence for a few minutes, and then I got up to leave. "Maggie," he said as I was standing to go, "I don't expect you to forgive me. But I want you to know, I'm getting help. I'm seeing a therapist. I'm trying to understand why I did what I did. And I'm going to make this right, as much as I can." "I hope you do," I said. And I meant it. Not for him, but for myself. I wanted to believe that people could change, could learn from their failures, could become better. It was a more hopeful way to live than carrying around bitterness. I left him sitting at that coffee shop table and walked out into the August sunshine. I didn't look back. By the time September rolled around, the divorce was finalized. After Richard's apology and admission of guilt, his lawyer suggested that we settle without additional court proceedings. I agreed. I didn't need to drag this out anymore. I had what I needed: financial security, the house, my life back. The papers came to Patricia's office, and she called me to review them one final time. "You did well," she told me. You have the house, the retirement accounts, and 10 years of spousal support. You're secure? What about Richard? I asked. Did he lose everything? Not everything, Patricia said. But close? The forensic audit found that he'd hidden about $2 million. He'll have to repay most of that, plus penalties and interest. He's also facing potential criminal charges for fraud. His business partner has filed suit against him. His reputation is destroyed. In many ways, he's lost more than you. I should have felt something at this news. Satisfaction, maybe, or vindication. But I just felt tired. The anger that had sustained me through the legal battle had faded, replaced by a kind of sad acceptance. Richard had done this to himself. One afternoon in late September, I was at my painting class when Marcus asked if I'd be willing to display one of my paintings. The community center was holding an art show in October, and he thought my work would be a good addition. I don't know, I said, suddenly self-conscious. My paintings aren't that good. They're honest, Marcus said. That's what matters. An honest painting, one that comes from a real place inside you, is always worth showing. I chose a painting I'd done a few weeks earlier. It was an abstract landscape, blues and purples and grays, with streaks of gold light breaking through. I'd titled it, After the Storm. I didn't tell Marcus this, but I'd painted it thinking about my life, about the darkness of the last year, and the small lights of hope breaking through. The art show was held on a Friday evening in October. I almost didn't go. I was nervous about seeing my work displayed alongside the work of more experienced artists. But Carol insisted on coming with me, and she practically dragged me out of the house. When I saw my painting hanging on the gallery wall, I felt a flutter of something in my chest. It was small, just a framed canvas among dozens of others. But it was mine. It was something I'd created with my own hands, something that expressed something true about what I'd experienced. A woman stopped in front of it while I was standing nearby. She studied it for a long moment and then she turned to look at me. "Did you paint this?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "It's beautiful," she said. "There's so much emotion in it." "What's the story?" I could have given her a vague answer. I could have said it was just something I'd felt like painting. But instead, I told her the truth. "It's about recovery," I said. "About going through something dark and finding light on the other side." She nodded as if she understood completely. "I see that," she said. "I see it very clearly." We talked for a few more minutes, and she introduced herself as Diana. She was a social worker who worked with women going through crisis situations. Before she left, she asked if I'd ever considered speaking publicly about my experience. "What do you mean?" I asked. "There are so many women who go through what you went through," Diana said. "Who trust someone completely and are betrayed, who feel like their world is ending. They need to hear from someone like you. Someone who came through it and built a new life on the other side." I didn't think much about it at the time. But Diana left me her card, and I put it in my purse. A few days later, I was at my literacy program, working with Rosa on reading comprehension, when she said something that stayed with me. "You know what I love about coming here?" Rosa said. "It's that you never make me feel like I'm stupid for not knowing something. You just show me the way. And you're never impatient. You act like teaching me is the most important thing you could be doing." "It is," I told her. "My ex-husband used to make me feel small," Rosa said. "He'd make fun of me for not being able to read well. He said I was embarrassing him in front of his friends. I internalized all of that, you know? I believed I was stupid. Coming here, working with you, it's teaching me that I'm not. It's teaching me that I was just believing what he told me, and it wasn't true." I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You were never stupid," I said. "You were just with someone who needed you to feel small so he could feel big. That's not about you. That's about him." "How did you know that?" Rosa asked. And I realized, in that moment, that my own experience had given me something valuable. It had given me the ability to recognize pain in other people. It had given me empathy. It had given me wisdom. That night, I called Diana and asked what she'd meant about speaking publicly. "There are support groups," she explained. "Organizations that work with women going through betrayal and financial abuse. They sometimes have speakers who share their stories. If you were willing, I think your story would really help people. Not in a sensational way, but in a real way. You could show them that there's a life on the other side of this." "I don't know if I'm ready," I said. "You don't have to decide now," Diana said. "Just think about it." I did think about it. I thought about all the women in my support group who were still in the thick of their pain, still wondering if they'd ever be okay again. I thought about how much it had helped me to hear from women who'd come through similar situations and survived. I thought about Rosa and how my example was teaching her something about her own worth. In November, I agreed to speak at a women's support group. It was a small group, maybe 20 women, ranging in age from their 30s to their 80s. Diana introduced me and explained briefly what I'd been through. Then I stood up and told my story. I didn't hold anything back. I told them about the discovery of the scheduled messages, about the shame I'd felt. And yes, I had felt shame, even though it wasn't my fault. About the anger that had sustained me through the legal battle. About the grief I'd experienced when it was all over. About the slow process of rebuilding and discovering who I was when I wasn't being defined by my marriage. When I was finished, several women had tears in their eyes. One woman, probably in her 50s, raised her hand. "How did you forgive yourself?" she asked. "For not seeing it? For not knowing what he was doing?" "I'm not sure I have," I said honestly. "I don't think you ever completely forgive yourself for trusting someone who didn't deserve your trust. But you learn to be gentle with yourself about it. You learn that trusting people isn't a character flaw. It's actually a strength. The problem wasn't that I trusted. The problem was that I trusted someone who wasn't trustworthy." "But how do you know who to trust?" another woman asked. "You don't," I said. "Not completely. But you can pay attention to the small signs. You can listen to your intuition when something feels wrong. You can maintain your own independence so that if someone does betray you, it doesn't destroy you completely, and you can surround yourself with people who will stand by you and help you through." After the talk was over, women came up to me individually. They thanked me. They told me their stories. They asked for advice. And I realized that Diana had been right. My pain, my experience, my hard-won wisdom, it had value not just for me but for other people. One woman, an elderly woman perhaps a few years older than me, hugged me tightly. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'm going through something similar right now, and I feel so alone. But hearing you, knowing that someone like me came through it and is happy again, it gives me hope." I held her and thought about how strange life is. How the worst thing that had ever happened to me, the betrayal, the pain, the near destruction of my life, had somehow become my greatest gift. Because now I could use it to help other people. Now I could be a light in someone else's darkness. That night, driving home through the November darkness, I thought about Richard. I thought about how he'd tried to destroy me, and I'd refused to be destroyed. Instead, I'd been transformed. My pain had been transmuted into something valuable. My betrayal had become my wisdom. In a strange way, I was grateful for that transformation, even if I would never be grateful for what had caused it. When I got home, I went into my studio. I'd converted the spare bedroom into a painting studio over the past few months, and I started a new painting. It was bold and bright, full of vivid colors and light. It showed a woman standing alone but not defeated, standing strong, standing free. I titled it Rebirth. 1 year after that first day in David Chen's repair shop, I stood in front of a mirror and barely recognized myself. Not because I looked different, though I suppose I did. My hair was a bit shorter, styled differently. I was wearing a dress I'd bought for myself, not because it was practical or because it matched something else in my closet, but because it made me feel beautiful. My face had more lines. A year of stress will do that, but my eyes were brighter. I looked like a woman who had been through something and come out the other side. Today was special. It was the 1-year anniversary of my divorce being finalized, and I was doing something I'd never done before. I was throwing myself a party. My living room was full of people. Jennifer and Michael were there with their families. Carol and the other women from my support group. Marcus from my painting class. Diana, who'd become a close friend. Rosa, my literacy student, had asked if she could come. David Chen and his family were there too. He'd become an unexpected but treasured friend. To Maggie, David said, raising his glass, for being brave enough to face the truth and strong enough to rebuild her life. To Maggie, everyone echoed, and I felt tears prick my eyes, but they were good tears. Happy tears. Over the past year, so much had changed. I was now speaking regularly at support groups and women's organizations. Deanna had helped me develop a workshop called Financial Safety and Emotional Resilience, which I'd begun teaching at community centers and nonprofits. Women came to learn about protecting themselves financially, yes, but also to hear about recovery and rebuilding. My paintings had been accepted into 2 more art shows. One of them sold. A woman from out of state had seen a photograph of After the Storm online and purchased it for her daughter, who was going through her own divorce. The woman wrote to me and told me how much the painting meant to her daughter, how it had helped her see her situation differently. I was still teaching literacy. Rosa had progressed so far that she was now reading at a 9th grade level. She'd started her own job, a position at a local library, and she'd told me that none of it would have been possible if I hadn't believed in her. But I knew the truth. She'd done the work. I'd just shown up and held the space for her to grow. The forensic audit of Richard's finances had been completed. It turned out he'd hidden nearly $3 million over the course of 5 years. The criminal charges had been filed. His business had essentially collapsed. He'd moved to another state to start over. I didn't track his progress, but occasionally Jennifer would mention something she'd heard through mutual acquaintances. He was in therapy. He was working a regular job. He was trying to rebuild, in his own way. I didn't wish him ill. But I also didn't wish him well. I'd learned to hold a kind of neutral compassion toward him, acknowledging that he was human, that he'd made terrible choices, that he was facing the consequences of those choices, but that none of it was my responsibility anymore. I'd released him from my heart. During the party, my son Michael pulled me aside. "I want to tell you something," he said. "I've been thinking about it for a while, and I think you should know. What you did this year, what you're doing, it's not just helping strangers. It's changing my life too." "What do you mean?" I asked. "I watched you go through the worst thing I could imagine happening to a parent, and instead of falling apart, you rebuilt. You created. You helped other people. You didn't let it define you. It's teaching me something about resilience and courage that I don't think I would have learned any other way." I hugged my son, and I realized something profound. My pain had ripples. It reached far beyond just me. It was changing my children, influencing how they approached their own lives, teaching them lessons about strength and survival. Jennifer came over a bit later with a folder in her hand. "Mom, I wanted to give you something," she said. "I've been working on this for a few months, and I think now is the right time to share it with you." I opened the folder. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. Photographs of me over the years. Some from my teaching days, surrounded by students. Some from family vacations. Some from recent months, at my painting classes, at the literacy program, speaking at support groups. And underneath each one was a quote or a note. Notes from people I'd taught. Notes from my students. Notes from women who'd come to my workshops. A teacher is someone who plants seeds of knowledge and watches them grow. That was from a student I'd taught 30 years ago, now a college professor. "You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself." That was from Rosa. "Your honesty saved my life. I was ready to give up, and then I heard you speak." That was from a woman named Janet who'd come to one of my workshops. I sat down on the couch holding the folder and I wept. Not from sadness, but from overwhelming gratitude for the life I'd been given, for the second chance, for the ability to transform pain into purpose. That night, after everyone had left, I sat alone on my porch with a cup of tea, looking out at the night sky. The stars were out, brilliant and clear. I thought about the woman I'd been a year ago, shocked, betrayed, devastated, certain that my life was over. I thought about the journey that had brought me to this moment. I thought about David Chen's words, "Cancel the cards and change the locks immediately." I'd done more than that. I'd canceled the life that wasn't serving me. I'd changed the locks on my heart, refusing to let anyone else's betrayal define my worth. And in doing so, I'd discovered that I had a life worth living, that I had value, that I had things to contribute to the world. The next morning, I woke up early and went for a walk. This was something I'd started doing in recent months. Early morning walks through my neighborhood, just me and my thoughts and the awakening world. I walked past the neighbors' gardens, past the park where I'd played with my grandchildren, past the community center where I painted and taught. I walked past David's repair shop and smiled, remembering. That day seemed like both yesterday and a lifetime ago. The woman I'd been then felt like someone I'd known in another life. As I walked, I thought about what I would tell the women in my next workshop. I thought about what I wished I could tell every woman who'd been betrayed, every woman who felt like her world was ending, every woman who thought she'd never be okay again. I would tell them this: you are stronger than you know. Your pain doesn't define you. Your betrayal is not a reflection of your worth. You have value that no one can take from you, no matter what they do or say or plan. And if you can survive this, if you can face it, fight it, and ultimately transcend it, you can do anything. You will not just survive, you will thrive. You will create. You will help others. You will become a version of yourself you never imagined possible. And one day, you'll look in the mirror, and instead of seeing a victim, you'll see a survivor. And then, eventually, you'll see a victor. You'll see someone who took the worst thing that happened to them and transformed it into wisdom, into strength, into purpose. That's what I wanted every woman to know. That's what I wanted my life to say. I finished my walk and returned home. I made my coffee, 2 sugars, a splash of cream. Just the way I liked it. And I sat at my kitchen table looking out at the roses. They were preparing for winter now, their blooms fading, their energy turning inward. But they would come back in spring. They always did. Just like me. I had come back. And I would keep coming back over and over again, stronger each time. Because that's what we do, we women. We survive, we adapt, we transform, we rise. 2 years after that life-changing day in David Chen's repair shop, I received an email that I wasn't expecting. It was from Richard. His message was brief. Maggie, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need you to know something. I'm getting remarried. Her name is Catherine, and she's a good woman. I want you to hear it from me first. Not through the grapevine. I also want to tell you that the criminal charges against me were reduced, and I've completed most of my probation. I've been in therapy consistently for 2 years now, and I'm trying to be a better person. I wanted you to know that I'm not the man I was. I don't know if that matters to you, but I wanted you to know. Take care of yourself. Richard, I read the email 3 times. My first instinct was to feel something, anger, maybe, or hurt, but instead I felt nothing. Or rather, I felt a kind of distant compassion. Richard was moving on, he was building a new life. That was good. It meant he was healing too, in his own way. I didn't respond to the email, there was nothing to say. Our story was over. Whatever lessons we'd learned from each other had been learned. Now we were just 2 people who'd once been married, trying to live our lives in the best way we knew how. I deleted the email and moved on. That same week, I was invited to speak at a major women's conference. Not just to a support group, but to hundreds of women, in a real auditorium, with a microphone and a stage. Diana had submitted my name without telling me, and when the organizers reached out, I almost said no. I wasn't a professional speaker. I wasn't famous. I was just a retired teacher from Georgia. But I said yes, because I realized that was exactly the point. I wasn't famous. I wasn't a celebrity or a self-help guru or someone who had it all figured out. I was just a regular woman who'd been betrayed and had somehow managed to rebuild her life. And maybe that was the most important voice of all. The night before the conference, I couldn't sleep. I kept going over my remarks in my head, worrying that I'd forget something important, that I wouldn't connect with the audience, that somehow I'd let everyone down. At 3 in the morning, I got out of bed and went to my studio. I looked at all the paintings I'd created over the past 2 years. There were dozens of them now. Some were good, some were mediocre, some were terrible. But each one was honest. Each one showed where I was emotionally at the moment I'd created it. I picked up a blank canvas and without planning or thinking, I began to paint. I painted a woman standing at a crossroads, with one path leading back into darkness and one path leading toward light. The woman was looking toward the light, but her hand was extended backward, helping other women up from the darkness. That was the image that had been growing in my mind for months, and now it finally had form. By the time the sun came up, the painting was done. It wasn't perfect, but it was true. I looked at it and knew exactly what I needed to say to those hundreds of women. The conference was held in a large hotel downtown. I arrived early and walked out onto the stage. The auditorium was empty, just me and the vast space and the bright lights. I stood at the microphone and tested it, hearing my own voice echo back to me. It sounded small in that large space but also strong. By the time the audience arrived, the auditorium was packed. Women of all ages, all races, all backgrounds. Some looked hopeful. Some looked desperate. Some looked angry. I recognized myself in every single one of them. The organizer introduced me briefly, sharing the basic facts of my story. Then I walked to the center of the stage, and I spoke. "Hello," I said. "My name is Margaret Eleanor Hayes, and I'm a woman who was betrayed. I'm a woman who nearly lost everything. And I'm a woman who survived." I told them my story. All of it. The marriage, the discovery, the legal battle, the grief, the healing, the transformation. I told them about the painting class, and the literacy program and the support group. I told them about Rosa and David and Diana, and Jennifer and Michael and Carol. I told them about the dark nights and the small moments of light and the gradual realization that I could build a new life. But most importantly, I told them this: if you're sitting here today and you're going through something similar, I want you to know that you're not alone. I want you to know that what happened to you is not your fault. You didn't deserve it. You didn't cause it. You couldn't have prevented it. And most importantly, it doesn't define you. The story of your betrayal is not the end of your story. It's the middle. And if you can survive this middle, if you can face it and fight through it, there's an ending waiting for you that's better than anything you can imagine right now. But I'm going to be honest with you. Recovery isn't linear. Healing isn't a straight path. There will be days when you feel strong and days when you feel like you're falling apart all over again. That's normal. That's human. That's part of the process. What I learned is that you don't have to do this alone. You have to let people help you. You have to ask for support. You have to find your community, whether it's a support group or friends or family or a therapist. You have to have people who believe in you when you can't believe in yourself. And you have to find something that's just for you. Something that reminds you that you're not defined by your marriage or your betrayal or your pain. For me, it was painting. It was teaching. It was rediscovering the parts of myself that had nothing to do with being someone's wife. Because here's the truth that I wish someone had told me: you are enough. You are valuable. You are worthy. Not because of who you're married to. Not because of how much money you have. Not because of what anyone else thinks of you. You are valuable simply because you exist. And when someone betrays you, that's not a reflection on your value. That's a reflection on their character. That's a reflection of their brokenness, not yours. So today, I'm asking you to do something. I'm asking you to make a promise to yourself. I'm asking you to promise that you're going to survive this, that you're going to heal from this, that you're going to build a life that's so good, so full, so rich with meaning and connection and joy, that the pain of the past becomes just a footnote in the story of your strength. That's what I did. And if I can do it, you can too. We can all do it. Because we are stronger than we know. When I finished, the entire auditorium stood up. The applause was thunderous. But what mattered more than the applause were the women who came to talk to me afterward. There were dozens of them, maybe more. They shared their stories. They cried. They hugged me. One woman told me that my talk had saved her life, that she'd been planning to take her own life that very week, and hearing that there was hope, that there was a way through, had changed her mind. I'm going to get help, she told me. I'm going to find a support group. I'm going to learn to paint or teach or do something just for me. And I'm going to survive this, like you did. I held that woman's hands and looked her in the eye. You're going to do more than survive, I told her. You're going to thrive. You're going to become someone you never imagined you could be. And one day, you're going to tell your story to someone else, and you're going to help them the way I'm helping you now. That night, driving home, I thought about the full circle of it all. 2 years ago, I'd been a woman whose life had been shattered. Today, I was a woman whose healing was helping to heal others. My pain had become my purpose. I thought about what I would tell you, the person listening to this story right now. I would tell you this: if you recognize yourself in my story, if you're feeling the fear and the betrayal and the devastating loss of trust, I want you to know something. This is not the end of your life. This is not the moment that defines you forever. This is the moment where you discover who you really are when everything else is stripped away. You are stronger than you know. You have resources inside you that you haven't discovered yet. You have the capacity to heal, to grow, to transform this pain into something meaningful. It won't be easy. There will be hard days. But there will also be days when you laugh again. When you create something beautiful, when you help someone else who's where you are now, and you realize that you made it through. That's what I want you to know. That's what my 2-year journey from betrayal to recovery has taught me. You are not defined by what was done to you. You are defined by what you do next. And if you choose to survive, if you choose to heal, if you choose to rebuild, then you're choosing to become the author of the rest of your story. And that's where the real power is. That's where the real freedom is. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for allowing me into your homes, your cars, your lives. If my journey has touched you in any way, if it's given you hope or courage or a sense that you're not alone, then all of this pain was worth it. Because we are not victims, we are survivors, and together, we are unstoppable.